Back now with the crusade by a former local resident whose innocence was ripped away.
Martin Andrews was abducted, sexually assaulted, and confined to a box in a wooded area of Suffolk. His 1973 case gave teeth to a Virginia law that governs how violent sexual predators are punished. Andrews talked with investigative reporter Chris Horn about his mission more than 50 years after the terror he endured. Chris.
Terror it was, Tom. Andrews continues to work as an advocate for victims of sexual predators. His case bolstered a law that keeps repeat offenders out of society, even after they've served prison time. His story is one of terror, torment, but ultimately turning the other cheek. Cold January day, 1973, no school. 13-year-old Martin Andrews of Portsmouth had a snow day.
Blue van pulls up, man inside, big smile on his face, says, "Hey, I'm in trouble, I need some help, can you help me out here?" We kept driving, and we kept driving. Then I see him take what I saw was the knife, and I knew at that point that I was in trouble.
Andrews has told us several times over the years about the next words he heard. They remain as chilling now as ever.
And he says, "Hold on a second. I got bad news for you. You've just been kidnapped."
Richard Osley tied up Andrews and put him in a box 4 by 4 by 8 that Osley had built into the ground. It was a remote wooded area of Suffolk. Andrews estimates that Osley raped him more than a dozen times. On the 8th day, hunters rescued him, but only from his plywood prison and not from his inner torment.
I had to get away. I had to go live someplace where people did not know who I was. People didn't look at me as if I was some damaged person.
He moved to Florida, but the doctors there were no more helpful than they were in Hampton Roads.
They didn't really know what to do with a child who had gone through what I'd gone through and survived, and I self-medicated. I was going down.
About 30 years after his terror, he had a religious awakening.
And I went into the neighborhood church that night and was met by the Holy Spirit at the door.
Andrews' attacker, Richard Osley, had been convicted and was serving time in prison by now. Andrews discovered he wasn't alone, that Osley had been convicted for at least 2 other sexual assault victims. Andrews then became a champion for a Virginia law that had been on the books already for just a few years. It calls for civil commitment of violent sexual predators after they serve their criminal sentence.
They receive intensive psychotherapy. From that, they can determine a risk level for reoffense.
Critics of the law say it's double jeopardy, keeping someone confined in a mental institution even after their prison sentence has been satisfied, but Andrews points to the results.
The ones that have graduated from the program, have a recidivism rate of about 4% the last I heard. Whereas going in, it's about 75%. And they have to work the program, because if you don't work the program, you don't get better. And if you don't get better, you don't get out.
Richard Osley never had a chance to qualify for that program. He was housed in a prison cell with an inmate who was a victim of sexual abuse. That cellmate killed Osley, the man who kidnapped, beat, and raped Andrews.
But there had to have been some sense of satisfaction, some sense of justice upon that news.
No, that's not what I wanted for Richard Osley. Richard Osley needed to serve his time. I didn't have a lot of hate for him. Hate can eat you alive, but then I was able, after a period of time, to be able to forgive him. And, I just don't want other children to go through that.
Remarkable strength. The Civil Commitment Program has about 400 violent sexual predators. They're confined in Nottoway, Virginia. That's about 60 miles west of Richmond and about 100 miles from the box in Suffolk, where Andrews was held captive as a terrified teen. Chris Horn, 10 on your side.